The year is 1097. Your armies have just besieged the Turkish stronghold of Antioch, and through months of bloodshed you have finally subjugated the city and successfully extended your territories. But the war has only just begun. Internally, a power struggle unfolds within your own ranks. The once trustworthy ministers standing at your side now wish to see you overthrown. And beyond the castle walls, a fleet of adversarial Turkish commanders and disgruntled citizens have now made themselves known. They seek vengeance for your impunity. Amid this chaos, will you be able to maintain control? Or will the struggle be all too much, as the power you once held slips from your grasp? To first understand how political power is maintained, it's important to look at common ideas of where this power might come from. A Hobbesian conception of power would see domination as the foundation for maintaining control. And while this is a very rudimentary idea, there is a lot of truth in its origination. Essentially, I have the ability to exercise power over you because I am the strong, and you are the weak. But further along this chain, and very distinctly, emerges authority. This is the most important dimension to gaining control. Authority conveys that one exercises power not just by force, but because they have directly or indirectly been submitted as the central authoritative body in a society. Therefore, where power is the ability to enact policy, authority is the right to enact policy. And in order for this authority to function at all, it is imperative the body politic as a whole is recognized as the sovereign power. The third form of political power, legitimacy, is perhaps the most elusive of the previously mentioned ideas. Legitimacy, conceived by thinkers such as Rousseau, Locke, and Weber, see that someone has the authority to exercise power because they are able to justify why they are rightful and deserving of that position. According to Locke, the government is not legitimate unless it is carried on with the consent of the governed. The civilians must believe in these institutions in order for them to be legitimate. Right, so that's where power comes from. But how does one transfer these ideas into maintaining control? Well, before you can seek to acquire authority or legitimacy within your faction, any leader must first use sustainable force to establish domination, which entails expelling any competing powers that would otherwise see you overthrown. To turn to Machiavelli, you must either pamper people or destroy them. If the previous party you have toppled from power still conspires against you, they must be vanquished at all cost, as to see this trouble in advance and clear it up quickly. And an upcoming Game of Thrones spoiler here. When Joffrey takes the Iron Throne following the death of the king, he immediately seeks to clear out any potential enemies that might harm him later down the track. This entails publicly executing Ned Stark and dividing up previous loyalties. This act asserts his dominance and clearly separates the winners from the losers. Now, the next step of any leader once they have established dominance is to acquire authority within their constituency or territory. This entails becoming the sovereign power by establishing a hierarchical order and, in essence, being the body or the government that makes the political decisions. And this is the simplest way to do so, is to make political decisions. A leader must do any number of deeds that indicate sovereignty, like collecting taxes, publicly proclaiming leadership, providing public goods, funding an army, or enacting law, etc. Generally, any leader who takes power will not struggle with this step, as most leaders either inherit this power or they win it by legitimate means like an election, or it is conquered and therefore the authority is seized. But really, citizens never really struggle in deducing hierarchy or order, especially if the leader has defeated most competitors to the top position. And now we have arrived at the most critical part in maintaining power, establishing legitimacy. This component is going to require a lot of luck and a lot of skill. However, if both come together, this is the defining factor in the success of any ruler. A leader who remains illegitimate in their control will not maintain power for long, either by being overthrown from within their government, a rebellious political party, or civilian revolution. So, to avoid any of these, it is necessary for a leader to gauge the importance of two conflicting forces: the common people and the nobles. According to Machiavelli, the common people only desire not to be ordered around and oppressed by the noble families. And then for the nobles, it is they who are eager to oppress the common people and order them around. In an antithetical way, it is the wise ruler who can appease both of these opposing forces that will ultimately be the one to sustain their power. A leader must justify their rule to the nobles by continuing to maintain their favourable position in society and clearly demonstrating where the strength resides. In this sense, a ruler must preserve the status quo, or the existing state of affairs, between the nobles and the slaves. For if a ruler were to be hated by the nobles, then they will very soon see themselves overthrown from within the confines of the castle walls. Nobles are well educated, cunning, and likely to be the few in society that actually knows and is willing to pursue where their interests lie. In addressing the common people, they are large, powerful, and unruly, making it an imperative to cultivate popular support if a leader has any hope of retaining power. The one critical aspect of the common people is the ease at which they are deceived. Civilians focus almost entirely on outside appearances and the results that a leader can provide for the state. They show very little interest in looking at the internal character of the political figure. Heuristics and cues are relied upon heavily to inform their decisions, where there is not the same sense of deep thinking as reflected among the nobility. So, acquiring the support of the populace, the leader must seek to demonstrate qualities like piety, integrity, and strength, whether or not these actions are actually true. Machiavelli's strategy writes, "It is best both to seem and be merciful, loyal, humane, upright, and scrupulous, and yet one's spirit should be calculated in such a way that one can, if need be, turn one's back on these qualities and become the opposite." A well-used cruelty is a necessary and even encouraged deed, but one must not go to the point of appearing tyrannical. To turn back to Joffrey, who I brought up earlier, and be warned, more Game of Thrones spoilers up ahead. While his domination and authority was strong, he ultimately failed miserably in being able to justify his sovereignty. Firstly, making no attempts to establish close ties among the party was his gravest error. He had tyrannized the ministers he desperately needed, under the mistaken guise that his sovereign position would grant him the amnesty to do away as he pleased. Then he compounded this error by failing to cultivate popularity among the civilians, making no attempt to appear loyal or compassionate, nor to bring any positive results. This incited a rebellion, which further festered undesired hatred and unruliness in what was already a very powerful and difficult to control mob. Now, once these themes became the defining point of his leadership, it was inevitable he would lose power. Joffrey should have instead chosen to first destroy his enemies, which I guess he did, whether or not this was a deliberate strategy or just unchecked tyranny. But from here, he could have used this momentum to pander to his close allies, while providing favour and pleasure to the nobility and high society. Joffrey had already won approval from the commoners. This was evident. All he had to do was demonstrate integrity and loyalty in his leadership, and he would have easily been able to hold on to this position. Any rumblings of rebellion would have been completely avoided by this simple act. Joffrey had every opportunity, but lost it all in a stunning rage. Maintaining political power is a complex task, and dependent upon the particular circumstances that come to pass. Any leader who is interested in maintaining power must have pragmatism in seeing their regime last in everything they do. Otherwise, power can be won or lost in the blink of an eye.